Hi, my name is Judy and I'm the City Stitcher, and welcome to my Flosstube channel. Today is Sunday, April the 17th, and it is Easter Sunday here. So if you are celebrating Easter, happy Easter, he is risen. If you are celebrating Passover, Passover began on Friday, April the 15th. Happy Easter. Happy Easter to you too as well, although you're celebrating Passover, so happy Passover. And if you are observing Ramadan, you are halfway through. As far as I know, Ramadan ends May 1st, so lots of things going on in this month. If you are new to my channel, this is a channel about cross-stitching and the stitching that I've done this week. And if you're spending time with me, thank you so much for spending some time with me. I hope what you see is helps you and that you enjoy what you're seeing me stitch on. As always, comments, questions, and topics you would like me to address are welcome in the comment section down below. I had a couple of comments on last week. A couple of them we're going to talk about when we get to them. But Deborah, I laughed. Deborah left me a comment saying she doesn't call it getting mad at a project, she calls it walking away. And that's really great. I will tell you, when I found out I was off by one stitch and I'd already done the windows, I was mad at the project because it clearly was not my fault. Anyway, so I'm glad you were able to walk away. In that particular instance, I was mad at the project. And then poor Joanne, congratulations on finishing the baby blanket for your grandson. Sorry to hear about the washing machine. Fortunately, you've heard a lot about supply chain issues, and I'm sorry that it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks for your part to come in. Maybe it'll come in sooner than that. All right. It's been an okay stitching week. Not, I would say it's like when you're like, oh my goodness, look at what I got accomplished. It's also not when you're like, but it all depends on the project, so you'll see that when we get there. So let's start off with my Cottage of the Month. So I'm working on the April Cottage of the Month by Country Cottage Needleworks. That's what it's going to look like. And where did I get to? So I got some stitching accomplished, not quite as much as I was hoping for. So I did get the roof on the house. I got the brown around all of the windows complete, the white around the doorway, and the doorway itself. Now there's white that's supposed to go in these windows, and I have not done that. Got the bottoms of the carrots as I want to do, because I was working on the brown and I had some left over, so I just finished it up. So started on the tree and got all of the grass along the bottom done. One of the things that I forgot to talk about last week, so I did put in this darker purple here. Believe it or not, I ended up going with the called for color. I know, I probably should have put a warning label on this. I used the called for color for that one. Last time I talked about it, I was debating I was going to go into one of my LNSs that is open for in-store shopping and have a look at, you know, whether I was going to change it to maybe an anchor or a different color of fancy floss or whatever. And I had gone in and I had looked at all of those options, and I'd pulled a number and I'd looked at them, and I still ended up going with the called for, which was DMC 553. I had also mentioned a couple of weeks ago in the episode where I was talking about going to visit the Craft Connection that I picked up a skein of amethyst there. And then same thing when I went to my LNS, I was going to check to see what their amethyst looked like. Their amethyst was exactly the same. It was very, very pale. So again, when I look at this picture, and the sun is just in a weird spot right now. If I had gone with a really, really pale purple, I don't think the house would have looked as good. Now, my amethyst is clearly darker than what they have, because you can see this purple line coming up here along the side and just under the roof. a little bit better, but I still am happy with mine. Let's maybe move it into a little more sunlight. So you can still see it. It's not a dramatic difference, and I think when I ended up putting that in, that's where I was like, you can still see it, but it was fine. So all I have left to do in the house is just fill in the white in the windows. And now I can sort of, there's just a border along the bottom, a couple of birds, you know, so would have liked if I'd actually gotten the tree done, but you know, that just didn't happen for a variety of reasons. But there is my April cottage continuing to make progress. I would say I'm a little bit behind on where I would like this to be. I would have hoped that by the 17th of April my cottage would be done, but I didn't. So anyway, that's going to end up being a focus for this week coming up. Get that sucker done. But progress is progress. Sampler stitches, my stitch along. So this is what it's going to look like. 9 charts by the drawn thread. I am technically working on, theoretically, that should tell you where things are at. Working on GHI. I did not do a good job this week on this one, so I'm behind officially, only a little bit. So the funny thing is when, you know, because Sunday nights I'm supposed to work on sampler stitches, but I also hadn't, when I recorded last week's video, I had not done my getting my length of thread in on Jerusalem. And the problem was that I knew that I only had like another week left on Jerusalem, and I got caught up in Jerusalem, and then by the time I was like, you need to put this down, and then I started working on sampler stitches, and then I had some problems. Don't I always have problems? Anyway, so where did I get to on this? So I'll tell you what I did not get accomplished. I did not get my Eastern stitch put back in. I did not resolve my D issue here. I did not finish off the letter H. I did not get the pink stitched into the letter G. So now you're going, what did you work on? So here's what I did. So I started putting in the God's eyes here, which are the grapes. And I wasn't happy with them. I was actually quite unhappy with them. So I took them out. We're going to take another run at it tonight. It was interesting because I was watching Sarah Hughes, who is hosting this Sal. She was working on hers. Now she's further ahead. I think she's got all of D, E, F completed, and G is completed. So we're running neck and neck-ish. Anyway, it's okay. It's not a race. There are no winners. But I wasn't happy with them, and she said she had a little bit of a fight with them too. So if nothing else, the good thing about a stitch along is that sometimes you can share your pain with people and go, I had a little bit of a fight with that one. Anyway, so I had a little bit of a fight with it. That's where I can safely say that I walked away from that one. So took it out. We're going to take another run at it. Then I came down here and did the hem stitch, which was easy peasy, no problem. And then of course I got to looking at, what did I do with it? It's like I've lost the chart. So then I was looking at my chart at what I had left to do. So sewing on the button, no problem. This is another one of those crazy drawn ones, drawn or pulled thread, I guess is really what it's called. And I'm going to have to do the debate as to whether I use it with the called for Soie 103 or whether I'm going to end up doing it with the Soie d'Alger or the Soie Perlee. So I decided I didn't want to make that decision. And then I would have to count too far, and anyway, I didn't feel like doing the Hungarian stitch. And then of course we have the infamous hand over here. So Suzanne had a really great suggestion house, it would make more sense instead of hand. And that was an awesome suggestion. Awesome. Because as soon as I read it, went, of course, a house is incredibly more representative of me than stitching a hand. And it starts with the letter H. So it was a brilliant suggestion. So Suzanne, thank you, thank you, thank you. That was awesome. So what I talked about last week, and so what I did do is, so I have this book called The Red Book of Sampler Stitches by Eileen Bennett of the Sampler House. So this is, man, that light's just, so that's what it looks like. And there are the author. And again, so it's just got, it's, you know, got a variety of stitches and stitch diagrams. Fortunately, they are in alphabetical order, which makes things easy. So I graciously came along to the letter H because I was going to look to see if I could come up with anything interesting else that I could put in there. And their suggestions were herringbone stitch, which is already incorporated. The holly point stitch, which anyway, it didn't quite work for me. I looked at it and went, That was the answer to that one. So I moved on from that. A hem stitch, and this is not the right place in a piece of work to put a hem stitch in anyway. The Hungarian stitch, which is already incorporated into this design, and that's all they had. So I also went online and looked at some options, and again, the number of specialty stitches that start with an H is somewhat limited. I ended up looking, after I got Suzanne's comment about house. So this is the Ultimate Sampler Motif book by Brenda Keyes. And there are 6 pages of houses in this particular book, which is great. They come in all different sizes and shapes and all that kind of stuff. So I have managed to find a house in the Ultimate Sampler Motif book that will fit in the same space as this hand. Now, I still am having a moment going, I wish I could figure out what that specialty stitch is that they did on those finished ones that I saw at the Craft Connection. So I think I'm going to have to phone my friend and the queen of the specialty stitch, Jeanette Douglas, and see if she's got any options. So again, did a whole bunch of thinking and blah, 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 and not a lot of stitching, which means I didn't get a lot of progress done. It's okay, that life happens, and that's sometimes how it works. I was also catching up with a friend this week, a stitchy friend, and I sort of said, hey, we're meeting up. Do you want me to bring anything to show you? And she said, well, you know, why don't you bring sampler stitches along? So I graciously brought sampler stitches along, and she had a look at it. She was very funny because she said, honestly, I've been watching the Flosstubes and been in my head going, I really think you're overthinking this. And the answer to that is probably. And yeah, if I would just make a simple decision and move on, it would all be fine. But for things like these, I will say I do tend to overthink them. And my answer is that's okay, because it's my project, and the only person who has to be happy with it is me. And if I want to spend the time overthinking it, that's my right. But I thought it was funny. Now, she did say it was looking lovely and beautiful and all the wonderful, lovely compliments and all that kind of stuff. But I had a good chuckle. Now, she also said that she was having a really hard time seeing it up close when I was doing my videos. So I will say I'm now going to take a moment, although my son is at that weird spot because we're filming it later because I'm filming this on Easter Sunday and I had lunch with my family. So I'm going to hold it up a lot closer to the camera for a few seconds here. So in case any of you are also going, I can't hardly see what's going on there. So here it comes. Now, it's also going to be the hard one going, generally, what I see on the screen and what you see are slightly different. So I'm hoping that works. Anyway, So not a lot of progress. So I have some catching up to do because this is the week that I'm supposed to be starting on the letter I down here. So I need to do things. So we'll fix that here in a minute. Well, actually the real answer is check back next week and see if I've fixed anything. Hopefully I will make some progress on this. But did a little bit, I put some stuff in, I took it out, did a little bit, debated some things, and then just put it away because I can't make any of these decisions, and I put it away for the night, and then that was the end of Sunday. So hopefully we'll do better tonight, if nothing else. Now that Lent is coming to a close, technically Lent is over because it is Easter Sunday, it might actually come out on Monday so I can do a little bit of a catch-up. So hopefully there will be good progress on that by next week. The other joke that I like to say, which ties into the overthinking, is I have a saying that I use with a friend of mine. She struggles with the counting aspect of counted cross stitch. If nothing else, you can certainly say that I have gotten a lot of use out of my charts for this series. You know, ABC, I stitched it twice. DEF, there are certain aspects where I put it in and taken it out, and put it in and taken it out, and hopefully the third time I put it in, it'll be fine. Anyway, if nothing else, I'm getting a lot of use out of the pattern. Value for the money I spent on it. Anyway, so that is my sampler of stitches. And then, of course, we have my Lent project. I will say I have not done the stitching on this project for today, which technically is the last day that I'm theoretically working on this for Lent. And Denise made a comment that she was a little bit in mourning for Jerusalem because she was really enjoying watching Jerusalem come along. And, you know, the real answer is yes, if I just kept going, I would make more progress. I get that. And I am going to miss stitch on Jerusalem as well. So it's going away for a little bit, but I won't say that it's going away necessarily for an egregiously long time. I do have some plans. I do have some plans about how it's coming up in the rotation once we get past Lent. And so that's all to be discussed. So what did I get done? Now, this is going to be really hard to see because, so I was still having my metallic debate last week. So I started down here. Actually, I should show you what the project looks like. Jerusalem by Thea Gouverneur, using the kit on the provided antique white linen, which I think is a 35 or a 36. That's what it's going to look like. I'm working on page 4. So I made some really decent progress here. Now I very specifically started further down because, again, remember, one of the lessons I learned is, given the tops of these are quite metallic intensive, is that it's best to work the metallics coming down and filling it in. So it took me quite a few days before I made some decisions on metallics, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So I started firmly down here where there was no metallic and sort of was filling in around here. I actually started here because I had these darker gray ones and worked my way. And then I still had some more time while I was debating, and so I came over here, and it's hard to see because these are largely white on white or cream on white with a little bit of taupe in there coming in here, but made decent progress. So I'd say I probably put in about 1,200 stitches into this over the last week. Now, one of my real goals was to actually get all the metallics in here. But for a variety of reasons, I have put some of it in, but there's a lot left to go because really, like, all of that is metallic. All that is metallic, and a good chunk of this is metallic. And I was really hoping, so this I did with Petite Treasure braid, because remember I was really unhappy with my DMC light effects. And I will say that this cross here, hard to tell, and you don't, there is some sparkle, both here and over here I did the crosses with the light effects. Now, part of the reason why I did that was I put this in and was very grateful because I put it in and I went, oh my goodness, this is so much better than stitching with the DMC light effects. Woo, hallelujah, fantastic. Put the cross in and went, that's all fine and good. But then as I was looking at it, it looks very different. And so I actually spent a little bit of time looking at how different the metallic looked here versus where else it was used. And this was a lot more metallic. It stood out a lot more. And so then I wasn't quite so happy with it, which is why the next solution was put in some of the DMC Light Effects metallic into these other ones. And then, as usual, work on something else and look at it, both at a distance and up close while you're working on it, but particularly sort of, you know, when I'm done with it, it's sort of sitting up perched on its area of the chair. You know, I could look at it. And the really interesting thing is certainly from a distance, it looked very, very different. So I've made some decisions. We're going to talk about that when we get to the topic. But I really did, I struggled with this and I had to sit with it for several days, which is why I haven't gotten, you know, quite frankly, which is why I ended up doing all of this stitching while I debated and looked at it. And again, I know my friend's going to go, I really think you're overthinking this. Just do something. Just do something and get it done. And the answer is yes, I'm overthinking it. But at the end of the day, I will have spent a lot of time on this project and I want to make sure I get to the end and I'm happy with it. And it's my time to spend however I want. So I can more than happy to overthink it because I am really, really good at that. And I'm totally comfortable doing it. But again, so made some decent progress. Again, this is really hard to see on camera. But got some decent stitching in there. I had a moment where I was like, well, maybe I could just get all of this done. And anyway, that's not quite how it worked out. Well, I debated all of my metallic thread options, which of course is the topic for this week. All right, so that's where I got to on this one. And that's everything I stitched on this week. I do have a little bit of haul. I did pick up a Mill Hill Buttons and Beads kit. This is entirely Sarah Hughes, the Stitchin' Mommy. This is her fault. It's because she's working, she has this plan where she's going to work on one so she can get to a point where she can have one of the Mill Hill frames and then just have 12 different ones that she can rotate in and out and change the monthly, which sounds like a great option. We all know, who knows if I'm ever really going to be able to pull that off, but I was kind of enjoying the concept in Mill Hill Mondays. And anyway, it's not like I don't have any other Mill Hills, but it's her fault that I bought this one when I saw it. That totally makes sense, right? Anyway, so this is what I got. Mill Hill kit comes with the perforated paper, all the beads. I'm not taking it out because, you know, many beads and a button. So picked that up. Picked up some silks. What did I get? So I picked up, this is Thread Gatherer, Silken Colors, Samurai Star. I picked up Classic Colorworks Belle Soie. It's interesting. Spring Violet. Normally it says Belle Soie in there, but this is a silk. And I picked up Wild Lavender by Dinky Dyes. And while I was in the Dinky Dyes section, unfortunately, very close to that was this Fantasy Blues, and I went, those two coordinate very well together. Now, the reason why I picked these up is for a completely different reason, but I went, wow, those coordinate unfortunately very, very well, and I figured I would pick up the Fantasy Blues while I was there, so I would remember that. And I picked up from Gloriana this skein of Purple Night Sky, which is very vibrant. The other thing I picked up was, so this is banding. Here we go. This is antique white, 27 count linen banding. It is 1.6 inches wide. This is for something very specific, and we'll talk a little bit about that next week. This is not related to the iSampler alphabet bands that I've talked about previously, that I bought the banding, the special banding and the spools and all that kind of stuff. This is for something else. Anyway, so those are my stitchy purchases for the week. I will tell you I am getting ready to place another order. There's a few things that I'm planning on placing the order now, and well, that's the topic for next week. All right, I'm looking around going, see, that's not so bad. And with that, we're going to get into the topic. So the topic is, let's talk metallic threads. So this is the week that I have spent a decent amount of time comparing DMC Light Effects, their metallic thread, which is really painful to work with, DMC Diamant thread, Petite Treasure Braid by Rainbow Gallery, and Krynic Braid number 4. And so I have done another video of that because it's so really not so much me and a lot more about the threads. Hopefully it's going to show up reasonably well. And I'm going to insert that video here. All right, so this is the portion where we are talking about metallic threads. And so what I've done is I've laid out the versions of threads that I have put to the test, or that have been part of the debate. So what I have over here is Rainbow Gallery Petite Treasure Braid. This, of course, is the notorious DMC Light Effects. This is the DMC with very glary. So this is DMC Diamant. There you go. So that's one that has the label on it. This is one, of course, that has been used in my test. So the label is off. Now this is Krynic cord, because that's one of the options in that Fabby Riley conversion option. Now it should be the 002C, but when I was actually getting to do the stitching, my 002C has gone missing. I don't know what special place I've put it. They used to be all in a tray. So I ended up using the silver, you know, but this is 002 regular number 4 braid and 002V. The reason why these two are out is for a different purpose. The one that I used in my test was the C, principally because the one that was coming up and what I was going to be stitching with, the conversion was for 002C. So let's start with, and I've got lots of notes on this, so hopefully I'll be able to get them done correctly. So let's start off with Light Effects, because that is the called for metallic in the Thea Gouverneur Jerusalem kit. So the Light Effects is 100% polyester. It comes, when you pull it out of the skein, it is divisible into 6 strands. So let's move some of this. So here's the little bit that I pulled out. So I've used some of the strands, but you can see, so I've used 2 out of the 6 And if I could get my fingers to work. Come on. Right, so there's my 4 that are left. So, you know, same with regular cotton embroidery DMC thread that we use a lot. You pull it off and it divides into 6 strands. When I was on the DMC website, because I was looking to see if they had recommendations as to how you should be using it, when you should be using it, that kind of stuff. You know, they say that you can use it on its own or combined with a strand of cotton floss. You know, again, it would depend on the count you're doing it on. Their recommendation is that you use it in lengths of 12 inches and not really a lot longer. And in each one of these skeins, you get 8 meters, which is, or 8.7 yards per skein. So what I did is I also spent a lot of time, because we all know the chances of me having extra 36 count linen in my house, in my fabric stash, is not awesome. So I could swear that I had a piece of antique white in here somewhere, but I couldn't find it. So I ended up using something else. So my sample stitching is being done on, this is a 36 count Lakeside Linen Purple Iris. I've had it for a very, very long time. So don't get excited. This is not new to the stash. I don't even know if this colorway is even available these days. Anyway, so that's what my 36 count fabric is that I'm using. I also, for comparison, I picked out this piece of 32 count linen that I had in my stash. I got it in one of the stitchy boxes that I got. It was unlabeled, so I don't know what colorway it is. I don't know who dyed it. Clearly it's based on a Zweigart fabric, but I don't know what it is. And quite frankly, you know, it's hard to tell in this light, but it's brown. So those are the fabrics that I've used for my sample swatches. And we're going to talk about all of them together once I've gone through all of the different kinds. But so there's light effects. The next one that I put onto my swatch is the DMC Diamant. And again, this is going to be a little bit harder to see. So there's the Diamant. Relative to and because they're spooled, they like to curve. What I'm really, yes, it's going to be hard to see. So the Diamant is thicker than one strand of Diamant is thicker than one strand of the light effects. Again, hard to tell on camera. So I had a little bit of a chuckle. Again, so I was on the DMC website. So they say the Diamant is a smooth, single strand, non-divisible thread, soft, tangle-free, and will keep its twist. One strand of the Diamant is equal to 2 strands of DMC regular cotton floss. This is also 100% polyester, and on each one of these spools you get 35 meters or 38.2 yards. So I will agree with them that this is thicker. I will agree that this, you know, as to whether or not it keeps its twist, let's see, so you can see that there's a little bit of fraying going on here. And effectively, this can come apart into 2 different threads. So I will say it does keep its twist a little bit better, but in terms of, again, you know, it will keep its twist. Well, like every metallic, it does tend to fray at the ends. And again, that is part of the reason why they encourage you to use the smaller lengths, is because your ends do end up fraying on you. So it was interesting. I had never used diamant before. So it was an interesting experience stitching with that relative to the DMC Light Effects. I do want to, the other thing, so DMC Light Effects comes in 36 different colors. The diamant comes in only 13 colors. You can go on to the DMC website, which I will link below. I will link all of the different pages for the different products, so you can see what there is. Again, so the diamant only comes in 13 different colorways. If you're going to the store, so depending on where you're going to get your DMC diamant, I will caution you that there are two versions of diamant. There is diamant and there is diamant grande. Now, not surprisingly, the diamant grande is double the thickness of the diamant. So effectively, it ends up being a six ply single strand non-divisible. So again, the intention is that when you get your spool, you know, the way that it comes, you would just unwind it from the spool and work on it. You wouldn't, unlike the Light Effects or regular strands of DMC cotton floss, you don't, oops, can't get this back in. You don't end up stranding it down. Because it is a 6 ply, the diamant grande effectively ends up being equivalent to a Krynic braid that is somewhere between a 4 and an 8. So a Krynic number 4 braid is effectively 4 plies braided together. A Krynic number 8 braid is 8 plies braided together. Because the diamant grande, who knows if I'm even saying that correctly, is 6 plies, it ends up being sort of somewhere in between those two. Now, I don't have any of the Diamante Grande. I haven't stitched anything with it. I didn't feel that I needed to. The Diamante Grande only comes in 6 colors. The other, the good thing between the Light Effects and the Diamant is that they have numerical consistency. I can hear people going, sorry, what does that have to do? So when you get, so this DMC Light Effects is E3821, which I don't know if you can see that easily on there, but that's what, so that's the Light Effects that I'm using. When you move into the Diamant, this is D3821. So the numbers are the same. And certainly when you look at that metallic conversion chart that I referenced before, you'll see certainly for the ones where there are colors across the stream that they come across numerically. So if you've got E3821, the Diamant equivalent number would be D3821. This 3821 is also available in the Diamant Grande, and the color, the number of that particular color would be G3821. So again, as you're moving between the 3 different categories, if nothing else, one of the things that I like is that they have numerical consistency. If you go 3821 is my color, or 168 is my color, or 225 is my color, you know that that is your numerical value. You then just need to go and see, as you move across the metallic thread range of DMC, whether or not that color is available in those different ways. Again, Light Effects has 36 colors. Diamant has 13, and the Diamant Grande only has 6. They are largely, so I'm thinking of like, so in Light Effects, there is an E699, which is, of course, a Christmas green. And again, DMC has numerical consistency, so it's E699, 669, 699. That's right, 699. And that is, it's the metallic version of their regular embroidery floss 699. So again, one of the things I do like about DMC is that largely as you're moving across several of their product lines, they have got numerical value, numerical consistency, which is helpful. Okay, so those are the DMC products. Petite Treasure Braid from Rainbow Gallery. So Petite Treasure Braid is a 3-ply braided metallic. It's a 3-ply but not divisible. So same thing, that as you're bringing it off of the card, it comes straight off of the card. And you use it just like that. Now, I know this is going to be incredibly hard to see on camera. So I will say that the Diamant does, let's try this. The Petite Treasure Braid feels a little flatter, whereas this really does feel like it's a twisted effect. So again, it stitches quite differently, and we'll talk about that in just a second. I will say in this color, in this color conversion, I will say that the colors, now clearly 3821 versus 3821, just in the different versions of DMC metallics, you would expect the color to be consistent. I will say it is reasonably comparable to Rainbow Gallery Petite Treasure Braid PB03. So from a color consistency, it's about the same. The Rainbow Gallery Petite Treasure Braid is a 65% rayon, 35% metallicized polyester. It is recommended for using on cross stitch in 18 to 22 count. The funny thing is that it says that it has light coverage for 18 count, which I find interesting. We'll talk about that. It comes in 99 colors. And an additional 13 colors are high gloss. There's 25 yards per card, so quite, so a lot more than what you get on a Light Effects, but less than what you would get on either of the, that's not true, less than what you would get in a Diamant spool, more than what you would get in a Diamant Grande spool. Petite Treasure Braid also comes in different versions. So I would say, while it is a 3-ply, so it's not quite as thick as an acrylic number 4 braid, it's not bad. I would actually say that they're quite comparable. They do have other treasure braids. You can get a treasure braid in 8, 12, and 16, again, which is comparable to Krynic number 8, 12, and 16 braids as well. So for the Krynic number 4 braids, so this is how I know it's getting to be a lot. And on camera, I'm sure they all look consistent. So, whoops, there's the Krynic number 4 braid. Again, from a color consistency, it's not bad. You know, so in terms of, as I'm looking across that chart, I think the colors are not bad. It's just how do they stitch up? The interesting thing is this particular, the 3821, which is where I was focusing my time on, because that, quite frankly, is the most of the metallic stitching that's coming up. Actually, that's not true. That's a different colorway. This is the next one. So I was really focusing on how these compare to each other. This is where the Fabi Riley comparison takes you to a Krynic 002C, which is not really a braid. And again, when I was doing my sample, that of course is when I couldn't find mine. So I did my sample with the colorway is about the same. But what I will say that is what's quite a bit different about the cord is it is much, much thinner than all of the others. So I found it interesting when I looked at that conversion chart that they gave versions that actually were converting to a Krynic cord. So out of all of these options, I would say the Krynic cord is the thinnest. And I've really tried to put them in from thin to thick, although you can barely see them, and I'm sorry about that. I don't think I can, well, maybe a little bit. The silver is going to be a problem. The silver is the Krynic cord is the thinnest, then the light effects, then the diamant. And again, the difference between the diamant and the Petite Treasure braid is that the Petite Treasure braid to me is a flatter metallic. And the Krynic, between the Krynic number 4 braid across these 5, this is the thickest. All right. So in true fashion, I did my sample stitches. And so what I've done is there we go. I'm holding it, so who knows how well this is going to work out. So this is the light effects, followed by the DMC diamant, followed by the Petite Treasure braid, followed by the Krynic cord. So this is my 32 count piece of linen. So I've tried to do the same thing. So 2 rows of 6 stitched right on each other, because that's how the metallics are showing up in my piece. So the interesting thing is, I would say the coverage on this, you know, I'd say the light effects 1 strand is not bad. Certainly the diamant gives fuller coverage. On 32 count, I would say that the diamant it's too much for me. It's too thick, it's too wiry. It was okay to stitch with, but I don't know that I would say that the diamant is really for 14 count. So it does put you in a little bit of an interesting position about, you know, do you prefer what you prefer? And again, I did this on linens. There was a part of me that said maybe I should have done, you know, one of them on a Lugana, because I do tend to stitch on that a little bit more. But for me, the diamant on a 32 is too much. So maybe for 14. It wasn't that bad to stitch with, but I felt at the end of the day, this is quite raised, you know, certainly relative to the light effects. The third one is the Rainbow Gallery Petite Treasure braid. And again, because the treasure braid is a 3-ply, it isn't technically quite as sparkly unless you've made sure that you've laid it consistently flat, which I, of course, as I was doing my sample stitches, I didn't necessarily bother, but not bad. And then this poor sad little silver over here is the Krynic cord, which I was very firm in there's no way I would use a single strand of Kryneck cord on 32 count. It's just, unless it was really like, maybe if you were outlining something, that's where that would come in. I ended up not putting the number 4 braid in here because the number 4 braid would be thicker than this. And so for my purposes and what I was trying to assess, I had my answer. You know, when I look across all 4 of these, you know, a little bit of a toss-up between the Petite Treasure braid and the Light Effects. The diamant was too much and the cord was too little. I will say, so here is the unraveling. Let me move this one. Let me just briefly. So there is the unraveling of the ends of the Light Effects. So one of the things that I've learned about stitching with Light Effects is, one, if I were using Light Effects, my recommendation is make sure you've got some of the stitching around it so that you can bury that thread as fast as you possibly can. This is not a thread that you can start with a pin stitch, because you won't be able to split it, and if you split it, you're sort of defeating the purpose of what you're trying to accomplish. So pin stitch is out of the question for this. And then the other thing that I do is I actually take, you know, when I was doing that second bit in the Jerusalem one, is I literally, I should probably get this on camera. I'm gonna take these away. Do this. There we go. So with these 2 frayed ends, so I would thread my needle, and then I honestly come back in and do a little bit of a knot. You don't want to do it multiple times because then it's too big to pass through. So I would really just do that. Pull very, 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 very tight so I can make the knot as small as I can, so that as I'm working with it, it keeps at least the end that you're stitching with doesn't fray as much. You know, again, as you use things over time, you learn these things. So that's what I do. Just one, and then pull it as tight as you can and work with it. And again, that also fits into the reason why I want to stitch my metallics starting at the top and working my way down consistently, because then you have to pull the knot through less. If I were doing color completion, that knot is going to add to the complexity. So 32 count was an interesting exercise. I was gonna, whoops, thought I had one. So here's the, let's see if we can get this on. So there's the fraying of the end from the Light Effects. Here's the fraying of the end from the diamant. Here is the fraying of the end from the Petite Treasure braid. So from a fray perspective, the Petite Treasure braid was the least, and then the cord doesn't fray. So it's interesting, they all fray except for the cord. On the 36 count linen, so same arrangement. So this is the Light Effects, and yes, there's a space in there because I missed a thread and I needed them to line up. Anyway, so that is the Light Effects. This is the diamant. This is the Petite Treasure braid, and this is the cord. So again, because this is the fabric that is closest to what I'm stitching with, this is really where the true test came in. So I felt that the diamant was too thick on 32. It's way too thick on the 36. Like, this is just,
I was not happy with it. It stands out quite a bit. And again, they say that the Diamant is equivalent to 2 strands of regular DMC cotton floss, and there's no way generally, unless maybe you're doing some satin stitches, that you would use 2 strands on a 36 count linen. So again, for me, the Diamant, while it is an option, because I'm stitching on a 36 count, this is out of the question. Even the Petite Treasure braid, not bad, felt different. And part of that test, why I had stitched up those other crosses in the Jerusalem with the, so I did the one at the top with the Petite Treasure braid, and then the 2 other ones using the light effects, is because it actually ended up stitching up quite differently when I did it. And again, so here's the Krynic cord. I will say Krynic cord is the least of my, I didn't like it across. I think where it needs to be used is really for backstitching, outlining, those kinds of things, or strand it up potentially. So I didn't bother stranding it up. But for me, coming across that Fabby Riley chart, I've kind of in my head saying if it ever comes across and it has something where it's like a 002C or a 001C, my vote was no. So that was interesting. So they're not, this one is a no because it's too thick. This one is a no because it's too thin, which left me with the Petite Treasure braid, and it left me with the light effects. I like stitching with the Petite Treasure braid a lot more than I like stitching with the light effects, which is why I had those 2 versions going on in Jerusalem. So with all of my stragglies, let's see if I can't just tuck these under. I, of course, will be ripping these stitches out, rescuing the fabric. So there's the 36 version. There's the 32 count version. And I am going to see if I can't get Jerusalem on here. Yeah, they look different. And so the interesting thing again, so I like actually how it's looking right now, because the interesting thing is up here on the 36, the Petite Treasure braid comes across as sparklier than the light effects. And I will say in real life that is true too. Here comes Jerusalem. Let's see how this, oh yeah, there we go. That's not bad. Okay, so there's the cross with the Petite Treasure braid. Here are the 2 crosses with the light effects. So these are the, the equivalents. And technically on a standalone basis, when you pull off 1 strand of the Petite Treasure braid and 1 strand of the light effects and you hold them together, from a color perspective, they actually look quite close. I would say when they stitch up, they look quite different. And that's what was giving me pause. So I stitched this one and went, woo, Petite Treasure braid. I like the stitching on that a lot better. That's lovely, great, awesome. But then, so I put that in and stopped for the night. And when I came back to the next day, I went, wow, that looks really different than the metallics that I have over here. Now, I will admit, most of the metallics are way down here under what I've done. But again, I've already got some in there. And from a consistency perspective, I actually felt like this was too much. It stood out too much. It sparkled too much. Now, I don't think the sparkle on the light effects is actually coming through. I think it is more sparklier than that in person, but not to this extent. So again, that's what gave me pause, where I went, to me, this really, really stood out. And when I took, you know, the Petite Treasure braid and compared it to how the rest of the stitching, because I'm only using one strand of DMC for the rest of the stitching, I was unhappy with how those two looked together. And so that's what drove my decision, right? So I am going to end up stitching, I am going to go with the called for materials. I know, again, using the called for light effects that came in the kit. It's been an interesting experience in going through them, because I certainly would say I can see aspects where diamant could be used, but I have to say I don't know that I would use diamant on anything other than a 28 count. Like I say, I think on a 32 count it's too much, and anything higher than a 32 count it's way too much. I like stitching with a Petite Treasure braid more than I like stitching with Krynic. That's just a personal preference. There's nothing wrong with it, and again, color trumps everything else. And the effect trumps everything else. Same way I go about deciding what I'm doing with fabrics. So it's been an interesting journey. Again, a lot of thinking, debating, contemplating, doing things with. So sadly, this is all going to come out and get restitched in the called for kit colors. So after all of that debate and hating the light effects, I still won't say that I love working with it. Certainly, as I was stitching this in, it really slows me down. I stitch dramatically slower when I'm using the light effects. And part of that has to do with the fact that it tends to twist up quite easily. So the other thing is, like, literally probably every 3 stitches, I would need to make sure that I was letting the needle hang loose and untwist. So yeah, all of that, looked at all of my options. Now, I will say, fortunately, other than, you know, the spools of diamant, everything else I had in stash. So at least I have that going for me. But yeah, interesting. On this particular instance, I would say my recommendation is, if you're doing a Thea Gouverneur kit and you are doing it on the linen, I would stick with what came in the kit. Believe it or not, after all of that and after all the moaning and complaining, it just means that I know that I've got moaning and complaining coming in my... So yes, the picture will have just changed. Yes, the light has totally changed, because I discovered when I was doing the editing that my video had cut itself off and I didn't have everything in there. Now, it was close to the end, so there's not a lot left to go. But here is the part that got cut off. And hopefully if I edit this, it will come in not too haphazardly. So I have learned things from this process. I'm glad that I did this experiment. I've learned things about these different products. I will say, even as I have stitched with the dreaded DMC light effects, that is my final answer for what I'm going to use for Jerusalem. I know, believe it or not. Still trying to get my head around that actually is my decision, but it is my decision. Because I think it is the right answer, particularly for the 36 count linen that I'm using. 35, 36, it's one of those two. It's something smaller than 32, which is factoring into that. Again, if you have it, and I don't know what the options are for Thea Gouverneur kits, but again, this is certainly how I feel these different products will factor into my stitching is different. I think diamant is an interesting option, but I would only use it if I were working on a 28 count. Because of the metallic that gets added in, I think even on the 32, it's just the difference between the diamant and the Petite Treasure braid. I would go with Petite Treasure braid. You know, as far as I'm concerned, number 4 braid and Petite Treasure braid are very, very similar. I just find I find it easier to work with the Petite Treasure braid, and that is a personal that's a personal preference. And as I always like to say, you've got to find the tools that work for you. So which metallic works best for you is up to you. There are some people who do prefer DMC, who prefer the Krynic, and that's totally fine. That works for them. That's great. You know, sometimes it's not that I'm against using the Krynic. Certainly if you look at the Nora Corbetts that I've been working on, you know, I'm more than happy to use the Krynic. You know, I'll use it when it's called for. I've used it in Frida's Fancy Stitching, the Banquet that I'm using, which is a canvas work piece. I have no problem using it, but if the colors are equivalent and the fabric that I'm working on is the same, I would probably go with a Petite Treasure Braid over a Krynic. That's personal preference. Like I say, the interesting thing for me in that Fabby Riley metallic conversion chart, anytime that it says a number that has a C at the end of it, I wouldn't use it. The other thing that I haven't, again, part of this is why I brought out these number 4s, although I didn't necessarily stitch with them. There are ones on there where they have, I'm just trying to get this back into the top. There we go. So this is, let's move these a little bit off to the side. So this is 002, this is 002V. I will say from a color perspective, same thing, that as you're looking at those options in that metallic conversion chart, I'm also not as keen on the ones that have a V after them. And in the land of Krynic, V stands for vintage. And so it is duller, it is less shiny, and I would certainly say compared to the light effects, you know, certainly when I was looking at that conversion chart and I looked at the ones that I had in Stash where I have the V, it was very simple for me to pull out those two strands, look at them together and go, the light effects won on that one, no problem. Just because I found these too dull compared to the other option. So, you know, take what you will with that with a grain of salt. Again, these are just my preferences. But it was in my head, I knew that. But it was just interesting to actually pull the specific colors out and look at them. And so that has been my journey over the last week with metallic threads. I have my decision of the five colors that were in my kit. So 3 out of the 5 had direct conversions from light effects to diamante. They all had color conversions into Petite Treasure Braid, and the color conversions were not bad. I think from a color perspective, they're very similar. Again, my issue is using the Petite Treasure Braid on 36 count, I think is too thick, which is interesting because on the Rainbow Gallery site under Petite Treasure Braid, it says it has light coverage for 18 count, and I'm not sure I would necessarily agree with that. The Krynic braids, according to my conversion, of the 5 that I was looking for, 3 out of the 5 were C's. 1 of them was a V, and then there was a Japan Gold. And at that point in time, I felt it was, you know, I'd really kind of dismissed Krynic right out of the gate. So that was a pretty easy one. So yeah, still a little bit surprising. I think this is the 4th or 5th time I've said this, still trying to make sure that my head is actually screwed on correctly, because my answer is I'm sticking with the kit fibers and I'm going with the light effects. So moaning and whining to come, you all know that. Just brace it. If you see Jerusalem coming up, you know that you'll probably have to face at least some moaning and complaining if there's a metallic in that section. And for Anna, who was wanting to know my conversion, there you go. It's very, very simple. My conversion is I'm not actually converting them. Again, if you're changing your fabric, that might lead you to different conclusions and what works best for you. But because I'm using the kit linen, light effects is my answer. And with that, I hope this has been helpful. I'm really worried that some of these pictures of, I'm actually going to pull this one back over. Yeah, the thicknesses of these, all these different things don't show up very well on camera, which, you know, we all knew that was coming. But that is my journey through metallic threads. I hope that helped you in some small way, and I will turn you back to regularly scheduled programming now.
So I hope that was helpful, and I hope that you could see things. I know that some of the things are really hard to pick up on camera, and my zooming capabilities are, you know, somewhat suspect, but I hope that was somewhat helpful. So after all of that, all of the tried and true and tribulations and putting on different things and comparing things and doing things, so the weird answer is, and you should have all seen this coming. My answer for what metallics am I going to end up using for Jerusalem, I'm going to end up using the DMC light effects that came with the kit. I know. Now, a couple of reasons. One, a lot of it for me really does have to do with the fact that it is on a 35 or a 36 count linen. If I were doing it on 32, I might make a different choice. Now, if you're buying these Thea Gouverneur kits and you're changing out the fabric for goodness knows what else, you may make different choices. Because I am using the kit fabric, that is my choice. So interesting after all of that. And yeah, another typical example of Judy, you know, thinking about things and trying things and debating things. And at the end of the day, sticking with the stuff that came in the kit. Yep, that's me. Should have known. Anyway, not atypical for me, as you all know. But it was an interesting experience because I really do feel now that I have done those examples and I've stitched them up for myself, I think it actually will inform some of my decisions as I think about metallics on a go-forward basis. So with that, that's all I have for you this week. I hope, as always, thinking about the people of the Ukraine, I'm actually quite worried about what is to come this week. So thinking about them, praying for them, really wishing that this would come to a conclusion, a peaceful conclusion sooner. And for all of us, I hope you've had a good week. I hope you're staying safe. I hope you're staying healthy. And I hope that you are finding some time to stitch. And I hope that your stitching is bringing you some peace and comfort during these somewhat troubled times. With that, as always, comments and questions, so topics are welcome in the comment section down below, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Take care, guys.